Did you know that since Best Friends put their stake in the ground to help lead the country no-kill in 2016, that the number of no-kill shelters in America has more than doubled? Today on Saving America's Pets, we are going to discuss whether or not that incredible momentum will be enough to get us to our goal of every shelter in every community reaching the no-kill 90% save rate benchmark by 2025. Hi, I'm Holly Sizemore, Chief Mission Officer for Best Friends Animal Society, and this is Rose, my fabulous co-host, as well as Lucy, my elderly cat who decided she had to get in on the action today. We have seen incredible progress in animal welfare over the last decade. We've seen the number of animal shelters reaching a 90% save rate benchmark grow exponentially. In fact, since 2016, 4.8 million more cats and dogs have been saved, thanks to the hard work of shelters, nonprofit animal welfare groups, and community support. Every year, Best Friends compiles a comprehensive report detailing and analyzing shelter data for the prior year. And today, Brent Toellner, Senior Director of National Programs, is going to give us the headlines and highlights from 2021.
Brent, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on. It's good to be back.
You and I are discussing the 2021 data set, is what we call it internally. It's kind of a geeky name, but really it's about the state of animal welfare in America for 2021. But it's June of 2022. Why are we talking about this right now?
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago since 2021 happened. But every year about May or June, we release our national data set for the year prior. So last year is 2021. We're in June of 2022. So we're releasing the data for the previous year. I know it maybe feels like to some folks in the industry that that's a long time coming, but we do a really exhaustive amount of work that goes into building this data set. It's not only information that's voluntarily fed to us from our many network partners. Thank you all for doing that through our SAC Coalition partners. But then also we get a lot of information in through publicly available sources, whether there's state reporting requirements for various states, whether we're doing Freedom of Information Act requests for particular shelters. We really try to comb and get as much information as we possibly can to deliver the most complete and comprehensive data set out there. And as such, we have over 3,300 shelters that we have data for 2021, and we're now able to share that information with the industry as a whole.
How many shelters are there total?
Just over 4,000. So we're at 4,069 total shelters. And so we have 80% of the total number of shelters we now have information for. That's the most we've ever been able to collect.
Why is it so important to have this kind of data at this level?
For us, our goal is to make sure that every shelter in the country is no kill by 2025. And so in order to achieve that goal, we have to validate it because so we need the data from all of the shelters to know whether each individual shelter is hitting that goal or not. And so not only is it important for us to validate this 2025 goal, but it's also important for us so we can understand the places that still need more help and more community support, more support from national organizations like Best Friends and others, so that we can move those resources and motivate those resources into the areas that need the most help.
Well said. And I know our CEO, Julie Castle, says it a lot, and I love the way she puts it. What gets measured is what matters. And so tell us, what does 2021 have to say about animal sheltering in the US?
Well, there's both good news and bad news when it comes to the annual data release. We've been out here the last couple of years sharing almost nothing but good news with the industry about the progress we've been making. But really for the first time last year, we saw a regression in life-saving at shelters. We saw an increase of the total number of animals killed in shelters go up from 347,000 in 2020 to 355,000 in 2021. And, that's an increase of 2.3%. It's unfortunate. I don't think it's terribly surprising to a lot of the folks in the industry. It's coming off of a little bit of a weird year with COVID in 2020. And so we're kind of working uphill a little bit. And we can talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. But, the big baseline is that for the first time since we've been tracking this data in 2016, we did see a little bit of a regression toward that goal.
That's unfortunate. And you said there was also a lot of good news. What's the main things we want to celebrate?
Well, so there's still a lot of good news in it. So, not only while the number of animals that were killed in shelters went up, there also has been an increase in the number of shelters that have become no-kill. We now have more than 52% of all of the shelters in the country are no-kill, which is phenomenal. Like we've never been in that situation before. Last year was 48%. So we actually saw an increase in the number of no-kill shelters that were out there. We also saw an increase in the number of no-kill communities. So that's a county where every shelter in that county has already reached that 90% benchmark. And that number is up now to 37% of all counties are now no-kill. So now more than a third of all communities are no-kill. More than half of all shelters are no-kill. We have 2 no-kill states in New Hampshire and Delaware, and 3 more that are just on the cusp. So we've got Rhode Island, Vermont, and North Dakota all are less than 100 animals away from getting there. So hopefully we can see them all cross that benchmark and achieve that for 2022.
We designate a shelter as meeting the no-kill benchmark when they've hit a save rate of 90% or higher. And you just told us that over half of US shelters have now hit that benchmark. What kinds of shelters are these? Are these just the small shelters or just large shelters in urban areas? Give us a sense of what makes up this 52%.
It's really across the entire parameter of like anything that you can think of that exists as an animal shelter. We have examples of those in this that have achieved no kill, and obviously examples of those that have not. But it means that it is achievable for anybody, regardless of what type of shelter that you're in. It just takes a lot of the work and a lot of the programming to be able to bring that to fruition. And obviously the community support that comes with that to help those shelters become successful.
When you think about Best Friends' goal that every shelter in every community meet that 90% benchmark by 2025, and we're halfway there, what makes you confident that we're going to get all the way there? I mean, that's just a few years away.
It's seeing the progress that we've made over time. I think back even 10 years ago, it was maybe less than 5% of the shelters in the country were no kill. And you think about the progress that has taken place to get to that, where now it's over 50%, like is a tremendous progress. And not only is it happening in an incremental scale, it's happening at an exponential scale because now we have more progressive leaders in the industry. So there's more people that people can call out and get help and resources from, or just knowledge of how it's working in their community, more people reaching out to others to provide that support, and more people coming up with really clever and creative ideas. I think that's been really important during this pandemic that we've gone through, that none of us have had a toolkit for how to manage that. And having so many really smart and creative people problem solve around the challenges that we've been brought forward is going to continue. It's benefited us through the pandemic. It's going to continue to benefit us.
Why did we backslide for the first time ever?
So we saw an increase in intake across shelters of about 8.1% across the board last year. I don't think that's a big surprise to a lot of us in the industry because we saw such sharp declines of over 20% decreases in intake from 19 to 20. So seeing that go back up a little bit closer to 2021 levels, I think is not that surprising. What may be a little bit surprising is that we weren't able as an industry to have adoptions rebound at quite the same rate. And so while intake bumped up at 8.1%, it was lower on the adoption front. And so we're not bringing adopters back at the same pace. I think there are a variety of reasons for that. I think some pandemic related reasons may have had a consumer behavior change in that. But then there's also the reality that like shelters have been really suffering from these staffing shortages that we've seen throughout every industry that you face, like whether you're going to a restaurant or a hotel or anywhere you go, like everybody's suffering from this labor crunch.
Knowing what we know about the work that we do at Best Friends, we know that some shelters really did increase their life saving in 2021. So they sort of bucked the national trend. What were those shelters doing differently?
So I think it's really interesting when you look at the shelters that were working directly with Best Friends, they saw basically a flat change in the number of animals that were killed at their shelters. So there was no movement one way or the other. Whereas shelters that weren't working with Best Friends actually saw a 15% increase in the number of animals that were killed. think it's really important for shelters to be connected with someone somewhere so that they can get that help and support that they need, that they can get the advice on things that they need. It's those shelters that are feeling really isolated or who aren't a part of a larger network of organizations or a part of the national movement that are really struggling the most right now, or at least were in 2021. And even though that number was flat for us, we had some huge wins last year. So we had Tangipahoa Parish in Louisiana, who saw over 1,000 animals, more animals being saved through their work with the Shelter Collaborative and Brandywine Valley SPCA. It was such an amazing partnership that they're doing down there. We saw the same thing in Tulsa, where they had over 1,000 increase in lives saved through our embed program, where we had 2 of our Best Friends staff members that were embedded on site there, and at the Tulsa Animal Welfare Shelter for the course of the year. Some of those shelters make big strides of decreasing the number of animals that are being killed in those shelters, and that's really awesome to see, even during really challenging times.
That's great news, Brent. And speaking of Tangipahoa, we will be featuring them in an upcoming vlog. We're talking to Chip, their director there. So I'm super excited for that. What are the 3 most important things in this data set?
I think that the first most important thing is to understand that it's a real struggle for shelters right now. Seeing this increase is hard on the staffs, hard on the limited staff that are there, and seeing the increase in the number of animals being killed is very hard on those teams. And that has continued kind of on into 2022. And so I think that reversal of a long-term trend of decreasing deaths in shelters is a really important thing to know. But I think the second and third most important things to know, which were probably the most surprising things for me to learn in it, because I was very in tune to some of the struggles that shelters were seeing. But seeing the increases in the number of no-kill shelters and in the number of no-kill communities, I was really surprised by that. It was heartening to see that so many shelters continued to move in the right direction, even though it was a struggle. Even in spite of all the challenges, when people invest in the programming, the communities are invested in the shelters, that continues to be successful, even when things are challenging and it's hard times. And so to me, like, those are big headlines of all of this, for the good news components of it, even though I think the larger picture of some of the challenges are still very real.
Great. Thank you so much, Brent. Really nice talking to you.
Thanks for having me on.
For me, it's not just the data that makes me believe 2025 is possible. It's also the people that I get to interact with in the shelters doing the work. It's seeing the sheer volume of shelter workers who just a short time ago resigned themselves to thinking no-kill would be impossible for them, impossible for their shelter, impossible for their community. Seeing those workers, despite their legitimate skepticism, jump in to try new things anyway, working so hard to save even more lives, and seeing them transform from no-kill skeptics to no-kill champions, and seeing regular people living in the community raise their hands to volunteer to help. Check out how your community is doing at the Best Friends Pet Life-Saving Dashboard. We've put a link in the description, and please reach out to your shelter and ask how you can help, because together we can save them all.